Okay, so while we're on this subject, I want to talk briefly about when we start getting into the front foot, where we want the pressure to move from the trail heel to the front foot to the front toes, right, the ball of the front foot, and how it affects the movement of the pelvis, and also therefore helps keep the inclination of the spine, right, or helps keep your posture. One of the things that you find doing this a long time, as people start the downswing, their backside or their pelvis moves forward from that imaginary yellow wall look, right? So one of the things you see Tiger do, and he's always done this, he's always squatted very well. As soon as he starts down look, he's actually pushing back with his butt, right? So imagine that yellow line is the wall. As he starts down, he's pushing back there, right, to P5. And a good way of thinking about this, you've got that little yellow dot there on his toes, on his left toe. As he's pushing out towards his toes, right, to get the squat, you want to try and imagine that's the brake, right? I want you to think about the toes in the front foot. I want you to think about the toes as the brake and the heel as the accelerator, right? So you can see when he finishes, he ends up in the heel, the red dot, right? So let me talk about that just for a second, right? So as he starts down, we want to push into the front foot, push into the toes of the front foot, and the feeling is that by the time you get down to P5 around here, you've maxed out in the front foot towards the toes, and the pushing forward towards the toes actually helps keep your pelvis back, or keep the butt back there, right? Which then the knock-on effect is helping you keep your inclination to the ground. A lot of people, the butt comes forward and the spine gets too high, the head comes back, and then you're losing your posture, you're losing all your angles, or you're losing your inclination to the ground. So one of the things you see a lot of the pros do, Justin Rose does a lot of this as well, is you'll watch him do his practice swing, and he's doing all this stuff in slow motion. So he kind of gets down to there, he feels what he needs to do by that point, he feels what he needs to do down to by P6, and then feels the action as he's coming through the shot, and then he'll kind of complete his follow through. He's doing all this in slow motion, right? So I call that shadow work, like shadow boxing. If you watch the boxers when they do shadow boxing, it's like slow, it's deliberate. They're practicing the punt, they're practicing the jab, they're practicing the uppercut, right? So it's the same sort of thing you want to practice with your golf swing. Push into the toes of the front foot, keep your butt back, feel as though you're pushing into the toes and you're braking, right? And then don't forget, when you're pushing the toes, you're getting a squat, so that left knee's bending down. And then after that, after you've pushed down, the ground's going to push back up, right? These are the ground forces at play. As your leg straightens up, or Tiger's always referred to it as snapping his left knee back, right? So gets the squat by P5, and then snaps his left knee back. And then as he's snapping his left knee back, the pressure's moving into the heel, and you're going to use the heel as the accelerator. So the toes are the brake, puts the brakes on there, and then he has to straighten the leg up and get into the heel. And then that facilitates the clearing, and then he ends up with the pressure down here, look in the heel, right? Also notice as he's getting his squat, as he goes up to the top, the right hip is a little bit higher than the left hip as he's closed his turns, right? But then by P5, right, you notice how the hips are back to square, and also the hips are back to level, right? So if we're going back and the right hip is moving higher than the left hip, right, we now need to get back to kind of where we were at the start, right, so that the right hip can actually be lower than the left hip through the shot, right? And these are kind of the tilts involved in the pelvis, right? But that's worth kind of just doing some slow motion work and understanding that. Pushing to the toes to start the downswing, the front toe, lead toe, that's the brake. Kind of put the brakes on there. You don't want to hit any balls doing it. Just put the brakes on there. You're going to get the squat, and then after the squat, after P5, allow that left knee to snap back, bring the pressure back into the heel, right? And as you're doing that, that's the accelerator. That's go time. That's gonna facilitate the extending of the left leg, the extending of the hips, which then extends the spine and helps you keep your inclination to the ground.